Our first caller is Christian from California.
What's up, Christian?
What up?
How can we help you?
How are you doing, gentlemen? How are you?
Good. What's going on?
I just had a question for you experts on metabolic adaptation.
Okay.
Cool.
So my question is, how quickly and how severely can metabolic adaptation occur when on a long-term weight loss plan? So for example, if I were a client wanting to lose between 20 and 40 pounds in say 6 to 12 months, for how long is that sustainable on average before the BMR starts to significantly drop? Now, obviously, the short answer is it depends, but as a baseline, if I'm designing a long-term weight loss plan, what would be the general ratios of time in deficit to time in maintenance or surplus, or you guys call reverse dieting, so that those goals can be achieved while minimizing the metabolic adaptation? And then lastly, just to the second part of the question, how bad and how permanent or semi-permanent can the adaptation be? I don't really have a sense of scale. So when a BMR slows down, does it slow down maybe a little, 10 to 15%, or can it severely flatline, like cut in half, if I'm dieting down for too long or too aggressively at a time?
Cool question.
Yeah, so the answer is yes to everything you asked. So the metabolism adapts immediately. Now, what does that mean? That means it's constantly adapting. So anytime you're in a deficit, the tendency is for your metabolism to try to adapt to meet the new energy intake. In other words, the energy demands are always trying to meet the energy intake. Now, the things you can do to offset that metabolic adaptation, and by the way, it's not a bad thing. People, we've labeled it as this terrible thing, but if your metabolism didn't adapt, you would be dead. I mean, you need and it's a very complex system in the body. I mean, a long time ago, I pulled up a graph of all of the metabolic processes that we've identified. And it was like, I mean, it's one of the most complicated things or complex things we've ever observed. Now, your question is, well, how long can that last? When do I do reverse dieting? Or like so many things play a role in that, from genetics to lifestyle to also previous experiences. And I don't know if there's any necessary data to support this, but I can tell you from experience that if somebody has come from a place of lots of dieting or has been or tried to be in a deficit for long periods of time throughout their life, then that adaptation tends to happen faster and it tends to stick around longer. Like if you work with someone who's dieted on and off for most of their life, and then they come to you eating low calories already. They're like, look, I eat 1,500 calories a day. I need to lose 40 pounds. And you're like, okay, we got to do a reverse diet. That could take a while. It could take, I've seen people get reverse dieted up relatively successfully, significantly, only to be hit with a very quick metabolic adaptation once they're put in a deficit. The best thing you can do to move this in the direction that most people want, which is a faster metabolism, is build muscle. There's really nothing more effective than that. So rather than getting caught up in the how do we offset this and what's the ratio of surplus to deficit to maintenance type of deal, if you aim your gaze at building muscle, you'll almost always move in the right direction. Okay. So that means, move your gaze in that direction from a training standpoint and from a nutrition standpoint, and then mitigate muscle loss when you're in a deficit. So that's what I'm looking at. When I put someone on a cut, what I'm looking at is, are we losing strength? And if we are, then what I'm going to do is try and put you in more of a maintenance or maybe a short surplus. That's the main thing that I'm looking at. Typically, when you see good strength gains or maintenance, you tend to see more favorable results with metabolic adaptation. Does that make sense?
It does. And if I may, just from two standpoints on this question, one, of course, more general fitness and maybe bodybuilding. I see what you're saying. Now, I'm an amateur MMA fighter, so of course, when I'm thinking about weight, I'm caring more about the numbers on the scale come competition time. And I'm not talking about cutting weight. We know that's a different process, but just getting the numbers down. Would all the same considerations apply then to healthily have a weight loss goal if it's for competition like that?
Yeah. Okay. So the same rules apply, but here the nuance of this is how Sal started this which is it really has a lot to do with the individual and their prior diet history. For example, like a guy like you who's very athletic and probably eats in a surplus and trains to build muscle for most of the time, and then you just cut for a competition or like that, you can really push your body and it'll probably respond pretty well to the cuts. But I tell you what, the more and more you've done that over years, the more difficult it gets. Like I know like in the bodybuilding world, you get these competitors that have done it year over year over year, and it gets more difficult and more difficult for them to cut because the body's now adapted. They've seen that before. So, and just like the competitive world, if you think of a client who's yo-yo dieted so many times, they're not going to respond as well to, and what I mean by respond as well, because technically the metabolism is responding really well. It quickly adapts, but that's not what you want when you want to see someone slowly keep losing. So a generic answer, or what I would do is like, okay, I'm going to interrupt this person's cut, every third week if I think that it's necessary. If it's somebody who's getting great results in the deficit and we're on week 3, I might not interrupt it yet. I might wait until I see the progress really start to slow, and then I'll interrupt it with a maintenance or even slight surplus for a week or two, and then go back down again. And then I'm like, and I'm really going to have to feel that out with the client. And the more times you do that, the better you get at like kind of seeing it happen with your clients. And then even better is to learn how to interrupt that before the plateau hits. But the reality is you're going to train some clients in a deficit and a plateau is going to hit, and you're going to be like, okay, it's time for me to increase calories.
Use your performance as a gauge as an athlete. Okay. 100%. Use your performance. Look, if your body learns to burn less calories through activity, that can be a good thing in athletics. You don't want to be in the cage or the ring with this like burning tons of calories. You want your body to be pretty damn efficient while you're fighting. Otherwise you're going to gas out. And body fat percentage, there's definitely some correlation to athletic performance, but it's not like who looks the most aesthetic has the best performance. I mean, I can name fighters right now. Fedor did look nothing like a top.
That was my first thought. Was Fedor.
Yeah. So I know. Look, I'm pretty ripped. You put me in the cage right now, and I'm done. 30 seconds. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna be gassed out. So
well, keep in mind too, because he's asking kind of about two different types of
I know that
bodybuilding and sports are two different situations.
Right. So, but performance is the measurement. Okay, especially if you're an athlete. But even with clients, I'm looking at their performance in the gym. That's how I'm gauging. Do we do a refeed? Do we move it in the right direction? And I'm putting that above fat loss. I'm even putting it above fat loss, because if somebody's getting stronger or they're maintaining good strength, that's one of the better signs that's telling me we're not getting as much of a down, regulated metabolism. And then with you as an athlete, look, I don't know what weight you like to fight at, but I'm sure you've experienced this where you get fighters. They automatically assume that if they cut to a lighter weight, they're going to perform better. It's not always the case. Sometimes people cut, they go on a lighter weight, and they feel like garbage, and they get their asses kicked because they overestimated the power of being at a lighter weight.
I agree with that 100%. I am one of the fighters that wasn't a lifelong wrestler, so I'm not as bought into the severe weight cutting. So I'd rather risk versus reward, risk being slightly smaller than my opponent, not at the expense of being depleted.
Yep, yeah, totally. So
this is such a like the more we say here, like this will be a cool single topic, Doug.
Yeah,
we could go like really deep because there's so much nuance to what we're talking about right now, and it really does depend on the client, their history, what I'm currently seeing. If there were a competitor where they're going into a sport versus if they're going into bodybuilding, I mean. And then you hit it. Obviously, you listened for a long time because the way you started this whole question, like it was obvious that you've heard us kind of communicate this before. It really does depend. And for every good piece of tip and advice we're giving right now, I could think of an example of where I had to throw that out the door and do it a different way because, you get every individual depending on their history and their dieting, like can handle it. I've had people where I can put them in this severe calorie restriction and they fucking just shred. They hold on to muscle. It's like perfect. And then other people where, we as soon as we start cutting, they instantly start to adapt, or their body loses lots of muscle and not body fat as much. Like, so this is the real art of coaching, is learning this stuff, not only with yourself, but with your clients. I go back to, I know Sal uses performance. I'm watching a client and I'm going to our plan is to get lean, and I'm going to interrupt that cut you know, anywhere from every 2 to 3 weeks to stretching it out for 6 to 7 weeks before I interrupt it, all depending on what I'm watching, you know, whether that
That's a good range.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, it could be, I'm always going to interrupt a cut no matter who you are, but it really depends on what I see happening on how frequently I'm going to interrupt that cut, if that makes sense.
And then watching what the scale plateau, watching the energy levels, the sleep patterns get messed up, and then you can, okay, it's definitely time to refeed to surplus.
That's right. I'm also keeping in mind this too, because here's a mistake too a lot of people make is, remember that training is already a stress and dieting is a stress. And so a mistake that a lot of people make that make this happen even quicker is they keep the same intensity and volume of training as high as they were when they were in this big calorie surplus, and now they're in this cut. So sometimes I'll pull that lever. Sometimes the mistake that we're doing is like, we're dieting too hard and we're pushing too hard, and the body is just freaking out and going like, oh shit, what's his...
Even worse, typically what happens is people going to cut and up their volume.
Right.
Oh, now I'm going to add cardio on top of what my workout was. It took me a long time to figure out that the best thing I could do with my clients when I put them in a cut was cut their volume. You're going to reduce your calories. You're also going to work out less. And what do you mean I'm trying to lose fat?
You're already in a deficit. Let the body do the work. That's what I used to coach. That's how I used to coach all my competitors. It's like, listen, we already did the hard work building the muscle. Now we're in this deficit. Let the body do what it naturally will do. You pushing more, thinking you're going to get faster results, actually is shooting ourselves in the foot. So there is this like real like back and forth. I know. I feel like we didn't help you at all.
Telling an athlete to do less is the right thing to do, but so difficult.
Right, right. That's, I mean, so that's why this is so nuanced and stuff like that.
You're not really going to find a standard to all this.
Yeah. Well, I know. I hope we helped somewhat here, because I feel like we just made it worse for you.
Certainly helped. And
okay, good.
I'll disclose where it hit home too. The psychological implication of stepping maybe not outside my lane as a trainer or a nutritionist, but like I myself, I've been in alcohol and drug recovery for 10 years now, fighting the fight. And if you know anything about that, which I'm sure you do, co-occurring disorders occur. So between my fight and addiction and my athletic goals, I battled bulimia for a lot of years. So this hits home in terms of the back and forth to severe surpluses, or I'm just going to fast until I lose weight. And I saw your recent episode about fasting, you know, and all the way to just binging and purging. And I've had my own disorder in remission for 2.5 years, but I would empathize with any level of client, athlete or not, about what it can do psychologically or what it has done to somebody in the past.
There's a big, I mean, your situation is commendable for sure, but even with just somebody who's never battled with those addictions, when you go through years of like wrestlers, for example, or you're a fighter where you're cutting weight constantly, and then they go to try to live a regular life, the percentage of them that become obese is very high, because they don't have that fight to train for. They don't have that extreme, okay, got to do this for 12 weeks and go crazy. It's like, how do I live a regular life now and be fit and healthy? And they never learned those skills. What they lived for a long time was extremes.
Christian, how long have you been a trainer for?
Well, I am a former Marine Corps officer, so informally did a lot of training, got into martial arts once I retired a number of years ago. And only last year did I actually get the credentials for strength coach, personal trainer, nutritionist, and yoga instructor, just for real shits and giggles, excuse my language. And so I haven't really put it much into practice yet. And I'm aiming to just independently out of like my growing home gym.
You're going to be a good trainer, bro. You're asking the right questions. You got good experience, both like training yourself, others.
Did you do our course? Or did you see our 3-day course, or did you sign up for our course?
I'm not familiar.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Yeah, we actually launched our coaching program for trainers and coaches.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, we have a free 3-day training. That's watch that. That'll get you started. Like watch that. But yeah, we're building a trainer community that and that was a big shift this year. So
yeah, what's the URL for that, Doug? For the
mindpumptrainercourse.com for the 3-day training.
Yeah, and we'll email that to you also. So that you sign up. There's a 3-day training. It's free, and we talk about some things that can help you become more successful as a trainer.
Yeah, you got to join that community though. You'll love that. So I mean, that's what everyone's going through. So and you're going to be good, bro. I can tell already.
Thank you so much. Yeah, excellent. I'll look at that right away.
Awesome.
You got it, man.
Awesome.
Thanks for calling in, bro.
Stay in touch, dude.
All right.
You got it. Yeah, I mean, he couldn't have asked.
Good questions.
Well, I mean, you can't. I mean, you almost can't ask more nuanced.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. I mean, it's
such a hard one to navigate.
It is. I mean, I think we should do a single topic on it because of it, and because what's tough when someone hits you with that our thoughts aren't organized on how, because sometimes I feel like,
well, what it is I'm not talking to, like, if he said I have this client,
yes,
right.
then I can ask the question
For
or
sure.
a specific date towards like going up on stage or like whatever, like something specific.
yeah, and we could talk about, okay, well then here's what we want to do, and where we want to move. But when it's general like that, look, I've had clients where I reverse dieted them for a year.
Yeah.
For a year before
was
they
necessary.
positively responded to a deficit. And then I had clients within a couple months. It was like, boom, metabolism.
So that's why I think the way this single topic structure I think would make really good is like we pick like 4 or 5 common avatars, and then we would explain the dieting and cutting part for them individually.
Some
the
general things.
Yes, common pitfalls, common things that work really well, and things to look out for. Something like that. That'd make a really good nuanced step, because it is. It's like I'm listening to you and I'm like, oh yeah, that's really good advice. I'm like, fuck, but I can also think of course where that's contradicted. It's like for every good example or answer I have for him, I can also think of an example
that didn't work.
where that didn't work.
Right.
And so, but that's what I mean. This is the part. I mean, this is also the part that I love about coaching and training is the
individual like, part of that is so important to figure out, and it is. It's detective work, and that's half of like what we do.